I watched my sister slip on my wedding dress, the one I'd worn in another life, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Elena, you're trembling, my mother cooed, adjusting the veil that had once been mine. It's just pre-wedding jitters, sweetheart. You're about to marry the most eligible bachelor in the city. Marcus Chen, the man I'd loved, the man who'd promised me forever, the man who'd broken me so completely in my first life that I'd died hollow and alone. But that was before I woke up 5 years in the past on my 23rd birthday, with every memory of betrayal burned into my soul. Ava, come help your sister, my mother snapped, finally acknowledging my presence in the corner of the bridal suite. You're the maid of honor. Act like it. I moved forward obediently, the perfect image of the dutiful older sister. Elena watched me in the mirror, her eyes gleaming with that familiar mixture of triumph and contempt. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd stolen my life, my love, my future. She had no idea that this time I'd let her. The vows you wrote are beautiful, Elena said, her voice saccharine sweet. You always had such a way with words, Ava. I hope you don't mind that I borrowed them, added a few personal touches, of course. I smiled, adjusting her veil with gentle fingers. Of course not. That's what sisters are for. She didn't know that those vows, every word, every phrase, every promise, were already engraved inside the Chen family ring. The ring that Marcus's grandmother had given me in my first life. The ring that had been passed down for 7 generations. The ring that Marcus would place on Elena's finger in less than an hour. The ring that would destroy her the moment anyone bothered to look inside. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I died so you can understand why watching my sister's impending humiliation filled me with such pure crystalline joy. In my first life, I met Marcus Chen at a charity gala when I was 23. He was 28, newly returned from finishing his MBA at Harvard and being groomed to take over Chen Industries, a tech empire worth billions. I was a junior architect at a small firm, wearing a borrowed dress and drowning in student loans we shouldn't have fit. But we did. He found me hiding on the balcony, overwhelmed by the crowd and the wealth on display. First gala? He'd asked, handing me a glass of champagne. That obvious? You're the only person here who looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. He'd smiled, and it had felt like the sun breaking through clouds. Marcus Chen. Ava Morrison. I'd shaken his hand, trying not to stare at how perfectly his tuxedo fit. And yes, very first. My boss got food poisoning and gave me his ticket. I think he forgot to mention the dress code was obscenely wealthy. He'd laughed, a real laugh, not the polite chuckle I'd heard all night. Want to get out of here? I know a taco truck, 3 blocks away that makes the best al pastor you've ever had. I should have said no, should have been sensible, stayed at the gala, networked like I was supposed to, but something in his eyes made me feel reckless. We left together, and my life changed. For 3 months, we dated in secret. He wanted to be sure, he said, before introducing me to his family. The Chens were old money, traditional, with expectations about who their son would marry. He wanted to be certain that what we had was real before subjecting me to their scrutiny. I understood. Or I thought I did. What I didn't know was that my sister had seen us together. Elena, 2 years younger than me, had always been the beautiful one, the charming one, the one everyone loved. I'd spent my whole life in her shadow, and I'd made peace with it. She was my sister. I loved her. I didn't know she'd been following me. Didn't know she'd taken photos of Marcus and me together. Didn't know she'd researched him, learned everything about him, memorized his habits and his favorite places. Didn't know that when she accidentally bumped into him at a coffee shop, she'd seem like fate itself. The first time Marcus brought her up, we were at my tiny apartment, tangled together on my secondhand couch. I met someone interesting today, he said, playing with my hair. She said she's your sister. I'd frozen. Elena? She's very charming, very interested in the tech industry. He'd kissed my forehead, oblivious to the ice spreading through my veins. She mentioned you're close. Maybe we could all have dinner together. It would be nice to meet your family. I should have said no, should have seen the danger. But I'd been so happy that he wanted to meet my family that he was ready to make things official. That dinner was the beginning of the end. Elena arrived wearing a dress that matched the description I'd given her of what Marcus liked. Understated elegance with a pop of color. She'd researched his company, his interests, his family background. She laughed at his jokes, asked insightful questions about his work, and somehow made everything I said sound naive or foolish by comparison. Ava's always been the dreamer, she'd said fondly, squeezing my hand. Head in the clouds with her buildings and designs. I'm more practical, I suppose. Business-minded like you, Marcus. He'd looked at her differently after that, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. After that dinner, Elena became a fixture in our relationship. She'd show up when Marcus and I had plans, always with a good excuse. She needed advice on a work project. She wanted Marcus's opinion on a business opportunity. She'd bought tickets to an event and didn't want them to go to waste. Wouldn't we all go together? I watched the man I loved fall for my sister in real time, and I did nothing. Because she was my sister. Because I trusted her. Because when she looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes and said, I just want to get to know the man you love, Ava. I want to be close to the family you're going to marry into. I believed her. I was such a fool. Marcus started canceling dates. He was busy, he said. Work was demanding. But I'd see his social media carefully tagged in photos with Elena. Industry events, gallery openings, charity functions, the kind he used to take me to. She's helping me network, he explained when I finally worked up the courage to ask. Your sister has incredible connections. She's been invaluable for the company. 6 months after that first dinner, Marcus sat me down in the same apartment where we'd spent so many happy nights. He looked tired, conflicted, and I knew what was coming before he opened his mouth. Ava, you're an incredible person, he said, not meeting my eyes. But I don't think this is working anymore. We want different things. You're focused on your career, on your designs. You never wanted to be part of my world. You said so yourself. You hate the galas, the networking, all of it. I can change, I'd whispered, hating myself for begging. I can learn to don't. He'd finally looked at me, and there was pity in his eyes. Pity. You shouldn't have to change who you are. You deserve someone who loves you for exactly who you are. Someone who fits better into your life. Someone like who? Like Elena? The guilt that flashed across his face was answer enough. She understands my world, he said quietly. She fits. I'm sorry, Ava. I never meant for this to happen. But it had happened. And 2 months later, Marcus and Elena announced their engagement. I should have walked away, should have cut them both out of my life and moved on. But my mother begged me to stay involved, to not tear the family apart over a man. Elena cried and said she'd never meant to fall in love, that it had just happened, that she hoped someday I could forgive her and be happy for her, and I, desperate to keep what little family I had, desperate not to be the villain of the story, agreed to be her maid of honor. I helped her plan the wedding, listened to her gush about Marcus, watched her try on dresses and sample cakes and choose flowers. She asked for my opinion on everything, then subtly adjusted my suggestions to make them her own. You have such good taste, Ava, she'd say. I just wish I could be as creative as you. The wedding was beautiful. I stood beside her, holding her bouquet, watching Marcus look at her the way he'd once looked at me. During the reception, his grandmother, a formidable woman in her 80s, pulled me aside. You're the architect, yes? She asked in her precise, accented English. Yes, Mrs. Chen. My grandson spoke of you. Before. Her dark eyes were sharp, assessing. He said you loved old buildings, that you wanted to restore them rather than tear them down, that you saw beauty in history. I do. She'd nodded slowly. Interesting. And now he marries the sister who tears things down to build new. She'd patted my hand. Take care of yourself, child. Wolves devour lambs, but lambs who become wolves surprise everyone. I hadn't understood what she meant, not then. The marriage was everything Elena had ever wanted. She became Ms. Marcus Chen, Queen of Society, photographed at every important event. She quit her job, never really had a career anyway, just jumped from one opportunity to another, and devoted herself to being the perfect wife. And I faded, stopped going to family dinners where I had to watch them together, threw myself into work, taking every project, every opportunity to be away. My designs won awards, but I barely noticed. I was successful, but I was hollow. Then 3 years after their wedding, Marcus's grandmother died. I went to the funeral, standing in the back, anonymous in my grief. The old woman had been kind to me in the months after the wedding, inviting me to tea, asking about my projects. She'd never mentioned Marcus or Elena, had simply provided a refuge where I didn't have to pretend to be happy. At the reading of the will, I learned she'd left me something, a letter and a small wooden box. The letter read, "Dearest Ava, if you're reading this, I've gone to join my beloved husband at last. Thank you for the tea and conversation these past years. You reminded me that there are still genuine people in this world. I've watched my grandson and your sister together. I've seen how she wears the life that was meant to be yours. I've seen how she parrots your words, copies your taste, lives in your shadow while standing in your light. In this box is the Chen family ring, passed down through 7 generations. Each woman who wore it had her marriage vows engraved inside, a tradition started by my great-great-grandmother. Marcus gave this ring to your sister, but it's not hers. Not truly. Look inside, child, and know that truth always surfaces even if we're not alive to see it. With love, Margaret Chen." I'd opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was the ring, a simple band of white gold with a single perfect diamond. Beautiful, but not ostentatious. Exactly right. I'd held it up to the light, squinting at the interior. There, in letters so small I needed a magnifying glass to read them, were words engraved in flowing script. You see beauty in broken things and make them whole. You are my foundation, my design, my forever. I promise to be the structure that supports your dreams. Marcus. They were the vows he'd written for me. The vows he'd spoken to me one night after we'd spent hours walking through an old building I wanted to restore. When he'd pulled me close and said he wanted to marry me someday, wanted to spend his life helping me rebuild the world into something beautiful. Vows he'd spoken before Elena, before he'd ever even met her, and he'd given the ring with those vows, with my vows, to my sister. I'd started laughing in that lawyer's office, great heaving sobs of laughter that turned into tears until they'd called someone to take me home. They thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. But I also finally saw the truth. Elena hadn't just stolen Marcus, she'd stolen my entire relationship. The inside jokes she shared with him were ones I'd made first. The restaurants they frequented were places I'd discovered. The romantic gestures he made for her were ones he'd practiced on me. She'd been a shadow, copying me, learning from me, then stepping into my place so seamlessly that everyone, including Marcus, had forgotten I'd been there first. I should have done something, should have exposed them, should have shown Marcus the ring, made him see what he'd done. But I was tired. So tired. I sent the ring back to Elena with a simple note. Something old for your marriage. May you treasure it as it deserves. She'd sent a thank you card with a photo of her wearing it, completely oblivious. I lasted another year. My work suffered. My health suffered. I became a ghost haunting my own life. And then, one night, driving home from another late night at the office, another night of running from my thoughts, I fell asleep at the wheel. The crash was instant. No pain, just a moment of clarity where I thought, at least it's over. But it wasn't. I woke up on my 23rd birthday in my old apartment with my phone ringing. The date on the screen read exactly 5 years earlier. The name calling, Marcus Chen. I'd stared at that phone for 10 rings, memories cascading through my mind like a waterfall. Everything. I remembered everything. The relationship, the betrayal, the wedding, the ring, the death. All of it. When I finally answered, my voice was surprisingly steady. Hello? Ava, it's Marcus. We met last night at the gala. You probably don't remember me, but I remember. How could I forget? The taco truck, Al Pastor. His laugh was warm, surprised. You do remember. Listen, I know this is crazy forward, but I can't stop thinking about you. Would you want to have dinner? Somewhere nice this time, not a food truck? In my first life, I'd said yes immediately. I'd been swept away, eager, dizzy with the impossible luck of it all. This time I said, I'd love to, but Marcus, let's keep it just us for a while. I'm private about my relationships. Family can complicate things. I can respect that. He'd sounded relieved, actually. To be honest, I feel the same way. Let's just be us for a while. Just us, I'd agreed and felt the first stirring of something that might have been hope, or might have been revenge. At that moment, I wasn't sure which, and I didn't care. Everything happened almost exactly as before, except this time I was prepared. I knew when Elena was following me, caught her twice actually, and pretended not to notice. I knew when Marcus would bring her up, and I was ready with my response. Elena, she mentioned meeting you. Wrinkled my nose, going for concerned sisterly rather than jealous. Be careful with her, Marcus. I love my sister, but she has a tendency to fixate on things. People. She can be intense. Intense how? She just wants what other people have. She always has. Growing up, if I got a toy, she needed the same one. If I liked a boy, suddenly she liked him too. It's harmless, really, just a quirk. I'd smiled softly. I'd rather she didn't know about us yet. Not until we're really sure. Once she knows about something I have, she obsesses over it. Marcus had laughed it off then, but I'd seen the seed planted, the tiny doubt. When Elena accidentally encountered him at the coffee shop, the same one the same day wearing nearly the same outfit, he'd been pleasant but distant. And when she'd mentioned she was my sister, he'd been polite but non-committal. Small world, he'd said, and left without giving her his number. Elena had called me, frustrated. I met your Marcus today. Did you tell him about me? I mentioned I had a sister. Why? He was cold, distant. Not at all like I expected. Maybe he's just shy around new people. I'd kept my voice light. Did you want to meet him for some reason? No, It was a coincidence, Ava, that's all. But coincidences kept happening. She kept showing up where Marcus and I were supposed to be, kept trying to engineer meetings, and each time I'd already warned him. She's doing it again, I'd say with fond exasperation. I told you she gets like this. She probably looked at my calendar or something. Elena has no boundaries when she wants something. It's a little weird, Marcus admitted after the third coincidence. It's very weird. But she's harmless. Just let's keep our relationship private for now. I don't want her fixating on you. He'd agreed, and for 3 months, Elena grew increasingly desperate trying to infiltrate our relationship. But without access, without the ability to study us together, she had nothing to copy. She was a shadow with no light to cling to. Then came the family dinner. Unavoidable this time because my mother had insisted, and Marcus had decided he was ready to meet my parents officially. But this time, I was ready for Elena. I'd spent weeks preparing, dropped hints to my parents about Elena's concerning behavior. Nothing dramatic, just worried older sister observations. She's been following me lately. I think she might be going through something. Has she seemed off to you? My mother, ever dramatic, had taken the bait. By the time the dinner happened, she was watching Elena like a hawk, ready to interpret any behavior as evidence of instability. Elena arrived wearing a carefully chosen dress, understated elegance with a pop of color, the same formula she'd used before. But this time, I was wearing something completely different from my first life. A bold, avant-garde piece that Marcus had never seen me in before that Elena couldn't have anticipated. She'd faltered, seeing me. Confusion flickered across her face. The dinner went differently this time. Every topic Elena tried to bring up, I steered away. Every attempt she made to connect with Marcus, I gently interrupted. And when she started talking about tech and business, trying to show off the knowledge she'd spent weeks acquiring, I struck. "Elena, honey, are you feeling okay?" I'd asked with perfect sisterly concern. "You're talking so much about Marcus's industry. I know you've been stressed lately, but you work in marketing, not tech. Did you switch fields?" She'd blinked, thrown off. "I'm just interested. It's interesting." "It is," Marcus agreed. "But I have to say, some of what you're saying is a little confused. I think you might have read some outdated articles." I'd watched her flush, watched her confidence crumble. And when my mother shot her a concerned look, the look I'd primed her for, Elena grew quiet, diminished. After dinner, Marcus had pulled me aside. "Your sister is interesting." "She tries too hard," I'd said softly. "She always has. I think she wanted to impress you because you're important to me. She just doesn't know how to do it without going overboard." It felt like she'd been studying me, like she'd memorized facts to recite. "She probably did." I'd looked up at him, let him see the gentle sadness in my eyes. "Elena has always struggled with authenticity. She watches people and copies what works. It's not malicious. She just doesn't know who she is without a template." He'd hugged me then, and I'd felt his relief. Relief that I understood my sister, that I wasn't blind to her flaws, that I was the genuine one. After that, Elena wasn't a threat. She tried a few more times to get close to Marcus, but he kept her at arm's length. And when she complained to our mother, my carefully laid groundwork paid off. "Elena, honey, you need to give them space," my mother had said. "You're being a bit obsessive about Ava's boyfriend. It's not healthy." "I'm not obsessive. I just want to be close to my sister's life." By memorizing facts about her boyfriend's career? By showing up where they're supposed to be? "Sweetheart, this is exactly the behavior your therapist warned us about." Elena had never had a therapist, but I'd planted that seed too. Comments to my mother about how Elena had mentioned seeing someone to work through some issues. My mother's imagination had done the rest. Defeated, Elena had backed off, and Marcus and I continued, our relationship growing deeper, more real. 6 months in, he took me to meet his grandmother. Margaret Chen had been exactly as I remembered. Sharp, elegant, formidable. But this time, when she assessed me, her eyes warmed with approval. "You're the architect," she'd said. "Tell me what you see when you look at this house." I'd looked around her Victorian mansion, seeing past the expensive furniture to the bones of the structure. History, craftsmanship. Someone built this to last, to be passed down through generations. It's a home that holds stories. And if it were yours? I'd restore it, preserve what makes it special while updating what's necessary. You don't tear down something beautiful just because it's old, you honor it. She'd smiled then, a real smile, not the polite society expression. "Marcus, this one understands. Hold on to her." Over the next year, I became close with Margaret. She told me stories about the Chen family, about traditions and history, and one day over tea, she showed me the ring. 7 generations, she'd said, holding up the delicate band. Each woman who wore it had her wedding vows engraved inside. "It's a tradition I started when I married my husband. Words fade, but gold remembers." "It's beautiful," I'd breathed, and I'd meant it. "When Marcus marries, he'll give this to his wife, and she'll add her vows to the collection, a permanent record of the promises that built our family." An idea had begun forming then, delicate and perfect as a spider's web. "What if," I'd said slowly, "the vows were already engraved, before the proposal?" Margaret had looked at me sharply. "Explain." "Marcus is a planner, a designer in his own way. What if he wrote his vows early, had them engraved, and then gave the ring as a promise that he meant every word? That his commitment was already set in stone or gold before he even asked the question? It would be unprecedented, but romantic. Very romantic." She'd studied me with those keen eyes. "You think like an architect, building the foundation before raising the walls. Isn't that how everything meaningful gets built?" She'd laughed and squeezed my hand. I like you, Ava Morrison. You're clever. Clever in ways that matter. 2 months later, when Marcus had come to me nervous and excited, asking me to help him plan the perfect proposal, I'd been ready. I want it to be special, he'd said. Unique. Something that shows her how much I've thought about this. Tell me about your vows, I'd suggested. What promises do you want to make? And he'd told me. Had poured out his heart about supporting my dreams, about being my foundation, about seeing beauty in broken things, and wanting to help me make them whole. I'd written it down, refined it, made it perfect, and then, carefully, I'd suggested the engraving. Your grandmother told me about the family tradition. What if you took it further? What if you engraved your vows now before the proposal, so when you give her the ring, the promises are already permanent? It would show that you're not making casual statements, you're committing to words that are literally carved in gold. He'd loved the idea, had thought it was brilliant, romantic, perfect. You're incredible, he'd said, kissing me. I'm so lucky I found you. You are, I'd agreed, and watched him take the ring to be engraved with the vows we'd crafted. Together, the vows that were mine, that had always been mine, that would always be mine, no matter what happened next, because I knew what was coming. I remembered every step of my first life, every betrayal, every moment Elena had stolen from me. And this time, I was going to let her have it all, every single thing. Except the one thing that mattered. The breakup happened on schedule, almost to the day. I made sure of it. 3 months before Marcus had planned to propose, I started pulling away, became distant, canceled dates, claimed I was overwhelmed with work, with a major project that consumed all my time. Ava, what's going on? Marcus had asked, frustrated and hurt. I feel like I'm losing you. I'm just stressed, I'd said, but I'd said it coldly, dismissively. I have a lot on my mind. Then let me help, let me in. Some things I need to handle alone. I'd pushed him away systematically, deliberately, made him feel like I didn't need him, didn't want him in my life. It had hurt, God, it had hurt, but I'd done it. Because I needed him confused, vulnerable, questioning our relationship. I needed him primed for Elena. Because Elena had been watching, waiting. Even with all my defenses, she'd never stopped trying to find a way in. She'd been patient this time, learning her lesson. And the moment she sensed weakness in my relationship, she'd struck. An accidental meeting at a bar where Marcus had gone to think, a sympathetic ear, a few drinks, a shoulder to cry on. I just don't understand her anymore, and Marcus had confided. I knew because Elena had told me, gloating, thinking I didn't see the trap. Ava's shut me out completely. She does that, Elena had said softly, so she always has. When things get real, when someone gets too close, she disappears into her work. She did it with our family, too. She loves the idea of connection but can't handle the reality. That's not, but he'd hesitated because I'd been acting exactly that way. I'm sorry, Elena had said. I shouldn't speak badly of my sister. I just hate seeing her hurt people. Hurt you. And just like before, just like clockwork, Marcus had started turning to Elena. Coffee to talk about Ava's behavior. Dinners to get perspective on the relationship. Long conversations about feelings and futures. I'd watched it happen with clear eyes this time. Watched my sister study the man I loved, learn him, mold herself into exactly what he needed in that moment of vulnerability. And I'd let her. When Marcus finally came to break up with me, I'd already prepared my performance. I think we want different things, he'd said, the words identical to my first life. You're focused on your career, on being independent. You don't need me. You don't even seem to want me anymore. I'd let tears fall. I'm sorry, you're right. I've been unfair to you. I can't be what you need. You could if you tried. But he'd said it without conviction, and we both knew the truth. He'd already decided. Be happy, Marcus. I'd kissed his cheek. Find someone who can give you what I can't. He'd left, guilty and relieved, and I'd allowed myself one moment of genuine grief. Because even though I'd engineered it, even though it was necessary, it still hurt to watch him walk away. But then I'd dried my tears, straightened my spine, and begun phase two. Elena had waited exactly 1 week before confessing her feelings to Marcus. They'd started dating in secret, terrified I'd be hurt. It had taken 2 months before she'd worked up the courage to tell me. "Ava, I need to talk to you about something," she'd said, coming to my apartment. "About Marcus. You're dating him." I'd said it flatly, like I'd suspected. She'd gasped, eyes wide. "How did you—" "Elena, please, you're my sister. I know you." I'd sighed, going for weary rather than angry. "How long?" 2 months. "Ava, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I just—" He was so hurt, and I wanted to help. And then we realized we had so much in common, and it's fine. She'd blinked. "What?" "It's fine. I'm not angry." I'd looked at her steadily. "I couldn't give him what he needed. If you can, then I'm happy for both of you. Genuinely." You mean that?" "I do." I'd hugged her, felt her relax in relief. "I want you both to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted." It was the response she'd never expected. Unconditional blessing. It had disarmed her completely, made her drop her guard, made her think she'd won so cleanly that there was nothing to worry about. "You're the best sister," she'd breathed. "I'm so lucky to have you." "You are," I'd agreed and smiled. After that, everything proceeded like a script I'd already read. Marcus and Elena dated publicly. They grew serious quickly. He had a ring already, after all, even if he didn't know it yet. And 6 months later, when he'd gotten down on one knee in the same restaurant where we'd had our first date, presenting that ring with vows already engraved, Elena had said yes. She'd called me immediately after, screaming with excitement. "Ava, he proposed! We're getting married!" "Congratulations," I'd said warmly. I'm so happy for you." "I want you to be my maid of honor, please. I need my sister with me." Of course, I'd be honored. And I had been. Honored to be given front row seats to her downfall. Because here's what Elena never understood. She'd won Marcus, but she'd won him with my words, my preferences, my entire relationship. She was living a life I'd designed, following a blueprint I'd created. Even Marcus didn't fully realize it. He thought he'd fallen in love with Elena naturally, that she happened to share his interests, that they connected organically. He'd forgotten how much of what he loved about her echoed what he'd loved about me. Elena knew, though. Deep down, she knew she was a copy, a shadow, a replacement. That's why she needed my approval, so desperately. That's why she asked my opinion on every wedding detail. "What do you think of these flowers?" "Those are beautiful, very romantic." "And these vows I wrote, are they too sappy?" I'd read them carefully, seeing my own words reflected back with minor changes. "They're perfect, Elena. Very heartfelt." "Really? You don't think they sound like they're trying too hard?" "Not at all. They sound genuine." I'd smiled at her. "Marcus will love them." She'd beamed, reassured, never questioning why I was being so supportive, never wondering if I had an agenda. The thing about shadows is that they're only visible when cast by light. Elena had spent so long following me, copying me, living in my outline, that she'd never developed her own substance. And now she was about to marry a man with a ring engraved with promises he'd made to me, using vows she'd stolen from me, in a wedding I'd helped her design. And when the truth came out, because it would, I'd make certain of it, she'd have nothing left. No relationship, no identity, no defense. Because this time, everyone would see her for what she was. The morning of Elena's wedding, I woke up calm and centered. This was it. The culmination of 3 years of careful planning, of playing the supportive sister, of watching my trap close around them both. My mother was already at the venue, overseeing last-minute preparations with the manic energy of a mother determined to create a perfect day. My father was wherever mothers send fathers to keep them out of the way, and I was in the bridal suite, helping my sister prepare for the wedding that would destroy her. I can't believe this is really happening, Elena said, watching herself in the mirror as the makeup artist applied the final touches. I'm marrying Marcus Chen. You are, I agreed, steaming her dress, the dress she'd chosen based on photos of what I'd worn in my first life, though she didn't know that. Are you really okay with this, Ava? Be honest. I met her eyes in the mirror. Elena, I've had 3 years to make peace with you and Marcus. If I wasn't okay with it, I wouldn't be here. But it doesn't bother you, even a little? Why would it bother me? Marcus and I weren't right for each other. You two are. I'd smiled gently. I'm genuinely happy you found each other. She'd relaxed, reassured once again. Elena always needed reassurance, needed to be told she was special, that she'd earned what she had. The truth, that she was a thief living in stolen moments, was too uncomfortable to acknowledge. The vows she'd written were in an envelope on the vanity. I'd helped her with them, just like she'd asked, refined her rough draft, suggested changes, made them flow better. She'd been so grateful. You always had a way with words, she'd said. I could never have written something this beautiful alone. Sisters help each other, I'd replied. Now, watching her slip into the dress, I felt that cold satisfaction return. Everything was in place, every piece positioned exactly right. It's almost time, my mother announced, bustling in with the veil. Oh, Elena, you look stunning. Absolutely stunning. She did. Elena had always been beautiful. It was never about looks. It was about who she was underneath the pretty exterior. Ava, help me with the veil, Elena commanded, and I moved forward obediently. As I pinned it in place, I caught sight of the ring on the vanity, the Chen family ring, waiting to be moved to Elena's left hand during the ceremony. Marcus had given it to her when he proposed, but tradition dictated she wear it on her right hand until they officially married. 7 generations of promises hidden inside that delicate band of gold. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator called through the door. This is it, Elena breathed, squeezing my hand. Thank you for being here. Thank you for not hating me. How could I hate you? I asked. You're my sister. We walked together to the ceremony space, an elegant garden venue with 200 guests seated in neat rows. Marcus stood at the altar with his best man, looking nervous and excited. His parents were in the front row, pride evident on their faces. His grandmother's seat was empty, a single white rose marking her absence. I took my place at the altar as Elena walked down the aisle on our father's arm. She was radiant, glowing, every eye on her. This was her moment, her triumph, her victory, and it would be her last. The ceremony began with traditional readings and music. I held Elena's bouquet and listened to the officiant speak about love, commitment, and partnership, about 2 people joining their lives, their futures, their souls. Then came the vows. Elena and Marcus have chosen to write their own vows, the officiant announced. Marcus, would you like to go first? Marcus cleared his throat, pulled out a folded paper, and began to read. Elena, when I first met you, I was lost. I'd just ended a relationship and didn't know what I wanted, but you showed me. You understood my world, my work, my dreams. You fit into my life like you'd always been meant to be there. I watched Elena's eyes fill with happy tears. You're beautiful, intelligent, and ambitious. You challenge me to be better. You make me want to build something lasting. He paused, emotional. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams as you support mine. To build a future together that reflects both of us. Applause rippled through the audience. Elena beamed. Elena? The officiant prompted. My sister took a deep breath, pulled out her own paper, the vows I'd helped her perfect, and began to read. Marcus, you are my foundation, my rock. When I look at you, I see my future, my home, my forever. Her voice was steady, confident. I promise to stand beside you in success and failure, to be your partner in building the life we've dreamed of. You see beauty in broken things and make them whole, and you've done that for me. I watched Marcus's expression flicker just slightly, just for a moment. Something in those words resonating, familiar. I promise to support your work, your family, your dreams, Elena continued, to be the structure that holds you up when you need it. You are my design, my blueprint, my forever. She finished, tears streaming down her face, and I saw Marcus blink rapidly, confusion mixing with emotion. Those were beautiful, the officiant said. Now the rings. The best man handed Marcus the Chen family ring, Elena's ring now, and Marcus took Elena's left hand, preparing to slide it on. This ring has been in my family for 7 generations, he said, his voice carrying to the audience. Each woman who wore it added her vows to those before her, creating a legacy of promises. Elena, I'm honored to— Wait, I said. Everyone turned to look at me. Elena's smile faltered. Marcus froze. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said, my voice clear and calm. But there's something the guests should know about that ring. Something important. Ava, my mother hissed from the front row. Not now. Now is exactly the right time. I looked at Marcus. You engraved your vows inside that ring, didn't you? Before you proposed. You thought it was romantic, making your promises permanent before you even asked the question. His face paled. How did you— Because I suggested it. 3 years ago when we were still together. I smiled, sad and gentle. When you wrote those vows for me. The audience gasped. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. That's not true, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. I wrote these vows for Elena. Look inside the ring, I said softly. Read what's engraved there. Read it out loud so everyone can hear the promises you made. Ava, stop this, Elena pleaded, tears now streaming for a very different reason. Marcus, I said, ignoring her, read it. His hands shook as he held the ring up to the light, squinting at the interior inscription. I watched his face change as he read. Confusion, recognition, horror. Read it out loud, I repeated. You see beauty in broken things and make them whole, he read, his voice barely a whisper. You are my foundation, my design, my forever. I promise to be the structure that supports your dreams. The audience erupted in shocked murmurs. Elena stood frozen, her face white as her dress. Those words sound familiar, don't they, Elena? I asked pleasantly. Because you just spoke almost that exact phrase in your vows. What a coincidence. I don't, Elena stammered. You copied them, I said simply. Just like you've copied everything else about my relationship with Marcus. The restaurants we went to, the dates we had, the jokes we made, the life we built. You studied me, learned me, and then stepped into my place so smoothly that Marcus forgot I'd been there first. That's not true, Elena cried. Marcus fell in love with me, with who I am. Did he? I turned to Marcus. Tell me, when did you write those vows? When did you have them engraved? He swallowed hard. 3 years ago, before I planned to propose. To who? Silence. Awful, damning silence. To me, I answered for him. You wrote them for me. You had them engraved for me. You were going to propose to me. And then Elena happened, and you forgot. You forgot that every word you love about her is an echo of me, that every moment you treasure with her is a reflection of what we had. She's not original, Marcus. She's a copy. You're lying, Elena said desperately, looking at Marcus for support. Tell her she's lying. Tell everyone this is— I remember, Marcus breathed, staring at the ring in his hand. God, I remember. The building, the old church you wanted to restore. We spent hours there, and I told you— He looked up at me, devastated. I told you I wanted to marry you someday. That you saw beauty where others saw ruin. That you made broken things whole. And I told you I loved you, I said softly. That you were my foundation, my structure, my design. I looked at Elena. And then you took those words, those moments, and made them yours. I didn't mean to, Elena whispered. I heard you talking one day, and I thought it was beautiful, and you stole it. You stole all of it. My relationship, my words, my life. And you've been living in my shadow for 3 years, pretending it's your own light. The audience was dead silent now, every eye fixed on the three of us at the altar. My mother looked horrified. My father looked furious. Marcus's parents looked between their son and their almost daughter-in-law in confusion. Why? Marcus asked me, his voice broken. If you knew, why did you let this happen? Why didn't you stop us? Because Elena needed to win, I said simply. She needed to think she'd beaten me, taken what was mine, become me. She needed to feel that victory completely. I smiled, cold and sharp, so I could take it away. I looked at Elena, at her tear-stained face, at the ruin of her perfect day. You spent your whole life copying me, Elena. Taking what I had, wearing what I wore, saying what I said. You never developed your own identity because you were too busy being my shadow, and now you're standing at an altar, about to marry a man who wrote his vows for me, using vows you stole from me, wearing a ring engraved with promises meant for me. Tell me, what part of this wedding is actually yours? She had no answer. How could she? The flowers are ones I suggested, I continued conversationally. The dress is based on the one I wore in my... I stopped, smiled. The dress is one I told you I liked. The venue is where I said I'd want to get married someday. Even your hair is styled the way I used to wear mine. You built this entire wedding as a monument to being me, and now everyone knows it. I love him, Elena said, desperately. Bites. That's real. My love is real. Is it? I asked. Or do you just love winning? Love taking what's mine? Because that's what you really wanted, wasn't it? Not Marcus, not the relationship, just the victory of stealing something from me. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came. I turned to Marcus. You have a choice now. You can marry her with everyone knowing the truth, that she's a replacement, a copy, living a borrowed life. Or you can acknowledge that this was a mistake from the beginning. He looked at Elena, at the ring, at me. I don't know what's real anymore. That's the problem with building a relationship on lies, I said gently. Eventually, the foundation cracks. I took my sister's bouquet, the one I'd been holding for her, the one that was supposed to be part of her perfect day, and set it on the altar. I'm done being your supporting character, Elena. Done helping you steal my life. You wanted this wedding so badly, it's all yours. Every moment of it. The confused groom, the shocked guests, the ring with another woman's vows inside. I looked at the audience. Congratulations, everyone. You just witnessed the most authentic moment Elena's had in 3 years, her complete exposure. I walked off the altar, down the aisle, past the gasping guests and the photographer who'd captured every moment. Behind me, I heard Elena start to cry, great heaving sobs. Heard Marcus say something in a low, urgent voice. Heard my mother shriek my name. But I didn't look back. I'd spent 3 years planning this moment, building to this reveal. 3 years of playing the supportive sister, the gracious ex, the helpful maid of honor, all so I could stand at that altar and tear down every lie Elena had constructed. The best revenge isn't moving on. It isn't living well or being happy. The best revenge is letting your enemy think they've won, and then showing them and everyone who matters exactly what they are. The aftermath was spectacular. Within hours, photos and videos from the wedding were all over social media. The guest list had included several prominent society figures, and gossip spread like wildfire through our city's elite circles. Chenhair's wedding halted by shocking revelation. Sister exposes bride's deception at altar. Copied vows and stolen relationships, the wedding that wasn't. My phone exploded with calls and messages. I ignored them all except one. Ms. Morrison, this is Rebecca Choi, Margaret Chen's attorney. If you have a moment, there's something Mrs. Chen left for you that I think you should collect in person. I met her at her office the next day. She handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it in Margaret's handwriting. Dearest Ava, if you're reading this second letter, it means you've done something magnificent. My grandson called me shortly before he proposed to your sister, called to tell me about the engraving idea that was spontaneous. Inspiration. I knew immediately it was you. I also knew Elena was a poor copy of something genuine, and I knew my grandson was too blind to see it. Men are such fools about these things. I've left you something more in my actual will, the one my grandson doesn't know about yet. 10% of my personal estate to be used as you see fit. But more importantly, I've left you a legacy of truth. I spoke to my grandson after his grandmother's intuition whispered that something was wrong. I told him to look at his relationship carefully, to ask himself if he really knew the woman he was marrying. He dismissed my concerns, so I set up a trust. If his marriage to your sister fails within 5 years, or if the truth of her deception comes to light, certain information will be released. Information about how she studied your relationship, information about how she inserted herself into his life deliberately, information that will make it legally complicated for her to claim any of the Chen family assets in a divorce. I'm a protective grandmother, you see, and I protect the people who deserve protecting. You reminded me that wolves can devour lambs, but clever lambs become wolves. Well done, my dear. You've earned your fangs. With profound respect, Margaret Chen, I read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and put it in my bag. Margaret had given me more than revenge. She'd given me a safety net, a foundation. And more than that, she'd seen me, really seen me, when everyone else was looking at my shadow. The next call came from Marcus. Ava, please, we need to talk. Do we? I need to understand. I don't know what I need. Everything I thought I knew is wrong. I met him at a coffee shop. Neutral territory, public, safe. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. I didn't remember, he said immediately. The vows, I wrote them so long ago, and then everything with Elena happened, and I just forgot. How did I forget? Because Elena made you forget. That's what she does. She's so good at being a mirror that you don't realize you're looking at a reflection instead of a real person. He ran his hands through his hair, looking haunted. I thought I loved her. Maybe you did. Maybe you do. But you loved her because she reminded you of me, Marcus. She studied our relationship like it was a textbook and reproduced every detail. The spontaneous moments you thought you shared, she engineered them. The inside jokes, she adapted them from ours. Even the way she laughs at your stories, I laugh that way. You just forgot. How do I not remember that? Because you didn't want to. When we broke up, you were hurt and confused. Elena appeared at the perfect moment, seemingly perfect for you. Your brain accepted the easier narrative that you'd fallen for someone new. You didn't want to see the truth. He was quiet for a long moment. Why did you really break up with me? The first time, before Elena, you were distant, cold. That wasn't like you. I debated lying, spinning another manipulation, but I was tired of lies, even mine. I was scared, I admitted. We were getting serious, and I was terrified. I'd never had something that good, and I didn't trust it to last, so I sabotaged it before you could leave me. I met his eyes. And then Elena took advantage of my stupidity. You could have told me. We could have worked through it. Maybe. But I wasn't brave enough then. I smiled sadly. I'm different now. What happens now with us? There is no us, Marcus. There hasn't been for 3 years. I've moved on. Have you? Because this, he gestured vaguely, encompassing the destroyed wedding, the revelations, everything, doesn't feel like moving on. This was justice. not reconciliation. I stood, preparing to leave. What you do about Elena is your choice. Marry her anyway, or don't. Try to salvage something real from the wreckage or walk away. Either way, I'm done being part of your story. Ava, be well, Marcus. I mean that. I hope you find something real someday. I left him there, staring into his coffee like it might hold answers. Elena tried to contact me dozens of times. Calls, texts, emails, even showing up at my apartment building. I ignored every attempt. Finally, my mother cornered me at my office. Ava Marie Morrison, what have you done? She demanded, storming past my assistant. Your sister is devastated. Her life is ruined. Her stolen life is ruined, I corrected calmly. There's a difference. She's your sister. How could you humiliate her like that? How could she steal my entire relationship and expect me to smile about it? My mother's mouth opened and closed. She didn't. It wasn't. You said you were fine with them. I lied. She lied. Apparently, it runs in the family. Ava, please, she needs you. She's falling apart. Then she'll have to put herself back together using her own resources for once, won't she? Without copying someone else's blueprint. I'm your mother, and I'm telling you to fix this. Apologize to your sister. Make this right. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. Saw the woman who'd always favored Elena, who'd always asked me to be the bigger person, to accommodate, to sacrifice for my younger sister's happiness. No. What? I said no. I'm not apologizing. I'm not fixing anything. Elena made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences, just like I had to. If you don't make this right, you're no daughter of mine. I felt something inside me settle, a weight I'd been carrying without realizing it, finally lifting. Okay, I said simply. My mother stared at me, clearly expecting me to cave, to backtrack, to apologize. When I didn't, her face reddened with fury. You've always been jealous of Elena, always resented that she was prettier, more charming, more parasitic, I suggested, more manipulative, more willing to steal whatever she wanted. Get out. Get out of my life. Both you and your father can... Dad chose me? I asked, genuinely surprised. He thinks what Elena did was wrong, as if that matters. She's in pieces, and he's taking your side. I made a mental note to call my father later. Maybe we could have dinner, actually talk for once. Build something real instead of performing family harmony. I think you should leave now, Mom. I have work to do. She left, spitting threats and curses. I let her go without a fight. Some relationships aren't worth saving. Some shadows need to be cut away so you can stand in your own light. 6 months after the wedding, I was exactly where I wanted to be. My architecture firm had won a major commission, restoring a historic district that the city wanted to preserve. It was everything I'd dreamed of, taking broken, beautiful things and making them whole again. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I was open to possibilities. I was learning to trust, to be vulnerable, to build without constantly looking for the cracks. My father and I had dinner every other week. He'd apologized for not seeing Elena's behavior sooner, for not protecting me better. We were building something new, something honest. Margaret Chen's legacy funded a scholarship for women in architecture, specifically for students who wanted to focus on restoration rather than new construction. It would bear her name and my name together, cementing our unlikely friendship for future generations. Elena had moved across the country, fleeing the gossip and the shame. I'd heard she was working in retail, living in a small apartment, trying to figure out who she was without someone else's life to copy. Part of me hoped she'd find herself. Part of me didn't care. Marcus had called off the wedding, obviously. He'd spent months in therapy working through the layers of deception and self-deception. He'd sent me a letter eventually. Long, handwritten, honest. Apologizing, explaining, asking nothing. I'd read it once and filed it away. We weren't enemies. We weren't friends. We were two people who'd once meant something to each other and now meant something different. A lesson learned, a chapter closed. But the story wasn't quite over yet. The real ending came on what would have been Elena and Marcus's first anniversary. I was at a gallery opening, a fundraiser for historical preservation, when I saw him across the room. He looked different. Older, maybe. More settled in himself. He was alone studying a photograph of an old building scheduled for demolition. I could have left. Should have, probably. But curiosity drew me over. "That's the Henderson building," I said, standing beside him. "Built in 1892. They want to tear it down for condos." "That would be a shame," Marcus replied, not looking at me. "It has good bones." "It does. I've submitted a proposal to restore it instead. Preserve the facade, modernize the interior, make it functional without destroying its history. You always saw the potential in broken things. Someone once told me that was worth something." He finally turned to look at me. "Ava, hi." "Hi, Marcus." We stood there awkwardly for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. "I hear you're doing well," he offered. "The scholarship fund, the commission. Your firm is making waves. And I hear you've been focusing on the company, expanding into sustainable tech. Trying to build something meaningful, something that lasts." He paused. "I've been in therapy." "I heard. That's good." I needed to understand why I let myself be so blind. Why I chose the comfortable lie over the complicated truth. He met my eyes. "I'm sorry for all of it. For not seeing what Elena was doing. For not remembering what we had. For being a coward when I should have fought for something real. I accept your apology. And I'm sorry, too, for sabotaging us the first time. For being too afraid to hold on to something good. We were both young, both stupid." "Spectacularly stupid," I agreed, and we both smiled. Small, sad, honest. "I'm not asking for another chance," Marcus said carefully. "I know too much has happened, too much damage, but I wanted you to know that I see you now, really see you, and I see what I lost. I'm glad you figured it out, truly, but you're right. Too much has happened. We're different people now." "Better people, I hope." "Definitely better." I gestured to the photograph. "Are you going to bid on this?" I was thinking about it. Why? Because I know the photographer. She specializes in buildings slated for demolition, capturing their last moments. If you buy it, I'll get her to sign it for you. You'd do that? I'm not your enemy, Marcus. I never wanted to be. I just needed justice. You got it. He looked at the photograph again. And now? Now I'm building something new. Something mine. Something real. I'm glad. He sounded like he meant it. For what it's worth, I think you're going to do amazing things. I already am, I said, and it wasn't arrogance. Just truth. We talked for a few more minutes, polite, surface level, two strangers who used to know each other. And then I excused myself, moved on to other conversations, other connections. Behind me, I heard him bid on the photograph. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that he'd donated it to a museum dedicated to architectural preservation. In the description, he'd written, "In honor of Ava Morrison, who sees beauty in broken things and makes them whole." It was the first time he'd ever given me credit for my own words. Years passed. I built my career, my reputation, my life. The firm grew. The scholarship fund helped dozens of young architects. The Henderson building became a landmark restoration, featured in architectural journals around the world. I fell in love again, really in love, with a structural engineer named David who understood that buildings needed both beauty and support, vision and foundation. We got married in a simple ceremony, our vows entirely our own, engraved nowhere but in our hearts. Elena never came back to the city. I heard updates occasionally. She'd found work she was good at, started therapy, was building a life that was actually hers. I hoped she found peace. I didn't need her forgiveness, and I never offered mine. Some wounds don't heal, they just scar over, and that's okay. My mother reached out once, years after the wedding, a brief email asking if we could talk. I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. But the ring, the Chen family ring, that had one more chapter. 10 years after the wedding, that wasn't. I received a package from Marcus. Inside was the ring and a note. Ava, this belongs to you. It always did. I'm married now, truly married to someone I met honestly, built with honestly. We had our vows engraved inside a different ring, one without history or ghosts. But this ring carries your words, your promises, your truth. It should be yours. I hope you're happy. I hope you found someone who deserves you. I hope you're building beautiful things and making the world better, because that's what you do. Thank you for the lesson. It was brutal, but I needed it. Marcus. I held the ring up to the light, reading the engraving once more. You see beauty in broken things and make them whole. You are my foundation, my design, my forever. I promise to be the structure that supports your dreams. They were good vows, true ones, just written for the wrong person at the wrong time. I put the ring in a small wooden box and placed it in my safe. Not to wear, not to use, but to remember. Remember that I'd been loved once before I'd learned to love myself. Remember that I'd been betrayed and I'd survived it. Remember that I'd been underestimated and I'd proven everyone wrong. Remember that sometimes the best foundation you can build is the one you construct for yourself. The final piece came full circle on a spring day, 15 years after everything began. I was at a lecture, guest speaker at a university architecture program, when a young woman approached me during the reception. Professor Morrison, I'm Emma Garcia. I received your scholarship. Well, the Margaret Cheneva Morrison Restoration Scholarship. Emma, I remember your application. The proposal to restore the Art Deco Theater was brilliant. She beamed. Thank you. I wanted to tell you that your story, what you did at that wedding, it inspired me. I blinked, surprised. I'm not sure that's the kind of inspiration. Not the revenge part, she clarified quickly. Though that was epic. I mean the way you saw your value, the way you refused to let someone else live your life. My older brother was in a relationship with someone who kept copying my sister-in-law's style, her phrases, everything. It was creepy, but when we tried to tell him, he got defensive. What happened? I showed him the articles about you, about the wedding, and I said, this is what happens when people become copies instead of originals. Eventually, everyone sees it. It clicked for him. He ended it, and now he's with someone who's actually herself. I didn't know what to say. My story, my pain, my revenge, my justice had become a cautionary tale. A lesson. Something that helped people see clearly. I'm glad it helped, I managed finally. It did more than help. It gave me permission to be wholly myself, even when it's harder. To build my own foundation instead of copying someone else's blueprint. She smiled. So, thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth, even when it was ugly. After she left, I stood there thinking about Margaret Chen's words. Lambs who become wolves surprise everyone. I'd spent so much of my life being a lamb, gentle, accommodating, letting others take what they wanted, and then I'd grown fangs, learned to bite, exacted revenge so perfectly that it became legendary. But maybe the real story wasn't about revenge at all. Maybe it was about a woman who learned her worth, who refused to be a shadow, who built something real from the ashes of betrayal. Maybe it was about seeing the difference between what's copied and what's authentic. Maybe it was about promising yourself that you'll never let anyone steal your light again. I pulled out my phone and texted David. Finished with the lecture. Wanted to grab dinner and talk about that crazy addition idea you had? His response was immediate. Always. Your crazy ideas are my favorite. We met at our favorite restaurant, a renovated warehouse that had once been condemned, now thriving with life and laughter. We talked about work, about the house we were designing together, about the foundation we were literally and figuratively building. And later, at home, I took out the ring one more time. Read the vows engraved inside. You see beauty in broken things and make them whole. You are my foundation, my design, my forever. I promise to be the structure that supports your dreams. They were beautiful words, true words. But they were never meant for Marcus to speak to me or me to speak to him. They were meant for me to speak to myself. I was my own foundation, my own design, my own forever. And the structure I'd built, my career, my relationships, my life, supported dreams that were entirely authentically mine. No copies, no shadows, no stolen moments. Just me standing in my own light, building beautiful things from broken pieces. The ring went back in its box. The box went back in the safe. And I closed the door on that chapter of my life, not with bitterness or regret, but with satisfaction. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd exposed the truth. I'd won. But more than that, I'd survived. I'd thrived, Hunt. I'd become someone I was proud to be. The wedding that had ended with Elena humiliated, Marcus devastated, and me victorious. But this ending, the real ending, was quieter, softer, more meaningful. It was me happy, me whole, me free. And that was the best revenge of all. Epilogue. 20 years after the wedding that destroyed my sister's life and remade mine, I received one final message. It came through LinkedIn, of all places, a professional platform, neutral and distanced. Ava, this is Elena. I don't expect you to respond, and I don't blame you if you delete this immediately. I'm writing because I've spent 2 decades in therapy working through what I did and why I did it. My therapist suggested I write you a letter, not to ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it, but to acknowledge the truth. You were right about everything. I was a copy, a shadow, a parasite. I never developed my own identity because I was too busy stealing yours. And when you exposed me, my entire sense of self collapsed because there was nothing underneath the stolen pieces. It took me years to understand that what I wanted wasn't Marcus or your life. What I wanted was to feel special, chosen, important, and I thought taking what was yours would give me that. But it just made me hollow. I'm not asking for a relationship or reconciliation. I know I destroyed that possibility. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I heard you're a mother now. I hope you're teaching your daughter to be herself, wholly and completely. To build rather than steal. To shine instead of reflecting. Be well, Elena. I read the message 3 times, then closed my laptop. Part of me wanted to respond, to acknowledge her growth, to say something gracious. But I didn't. Because Elena's journey wasn't my responsibility anymore. Her healing wasn't my problem to solve. I'd given her the greatest gift I could 15 years ago, the truth. What she'd done with it was up to her. My daughter, Sophie, ran into my office then, all 5 years of boundless energy and unfiltered joy. Mama, Daddy said we can go to the museum today, the one with the big buildings. The architecture museum? Yes, I want to see the models. Can we go? I looked at my daughter, my fierce, creative, wholly original daughter, and smiled. Absolutely. Let me finish up here. She hugged my leg and ran off, already planning which exhibits to visit first. I watched her go, this little person who was entirely herself, who created rather than copied, who built her own light. That was my legacy, not the dramatic wedding exposure, not the revenge that became legend, but this, raising a child who would never let anyone steal her voice, who would never be a shadow when she could be the sun. I reopened the laptop, looked at Elena's message one more time, then closed it without responding. Some chapters end with confrontation, others end with silence, and sometimes the most powerful response is simply living well. I shut down my computer, grabbed my bag, and went to join my family, my husband, my daughter, my real, honest, messy, beautiful life. Behind me, in a safe somewhere, sat a ring engraved with promises that were always mine. Ahead of me stretched a future I'd built myself, on foundations no one could steal, and that finally was enough.